Hi, welcome back to my channel. So I want to talk a little bit about my breastfeeding journey with you. I've mentioned in lots of other videos little bits and bobs about breastfeeding, but I've never gone into lots of detail because I feel like there's so much to tell you. So yeah, I wanted to do it today. However, I do feel like this video is going to be really long, so I'm trying to condense it down, and I have actually made notes on my phone so that I don't go off point too much. So I'm going to start right back at the beginning. When I was pregnant, I always knew that I wanted to breastfeed and read loads and loads about it, so just like the basic information, and I also went to a workshop about it, so learnt sort of how to breastfeed. So towards the end of my pregnancy I started to express the colostrum. Now if you don't know what that is, it's like the first milk that comes in. So I started to express that into syringes, which took me absolutely ages. It was just producing like drops, so I would express, so like hand massage my boob until these drops came out, and then I would suck them up in this syringe. Now it probably took me about an hour and a half to express a syringe worth, this sort of like 2 mils of colostrum. So I was doing that, and I managed to get like 3 or 4 and put them in the freezer, because I'd heard that it's good to take them into hospital with you, because if you have any issues with breastfeeding you can feed those to your baby. So had Jack, and obviously like it was all amazing. I've done a birth video, so if you want to know about my labour then I'll link that below for you. Had Jack, and straight away, like, I got out of the pool with him, and straight away the midwives were like, right, come on, let's breastfeed then. So put Jack on me. They weren't like pushy at all, they knew that I wanted to do it. They put Jack onto my nipple and sort of positioned him for me, and he just did not want to latch on at all. Like, for some women it happened straight away, but for us, like, that was not the case. He just did not want to feed. And I thought, oh, it's fine, like he's just tired or whatever, he's just not hungry. So we left it and we were just enjoying him, and then a little while later they came back and tried him again, and he still didn't really want to latch, and they were practically on top of me with Jack, like positioning him, putting him on me, and yeah, he just didn't want to know. So at this point I was feeling quite upset, because, not like really upset, but I was feeling like, oh, why is he not feeding, and was obviously a little bit worried. But because I had expressed the colostrum, I was able to give him those. So what I had to do was put my little finger in his mouth, at the roof of his mouth, and then it automatically starts the suckling reflex. So he was then sucking, and I could express the syringes into his mouth. So I managed to do that on the first feed. So we spent a few hours in the birthing centre, and then the midwife said, would we want extra help with feeding? And I really did, because I really wanted to feed Jack. So we then went, we were transferred to another hospital, another local hospital, where we would stay overnight and get lots of help with feeding. Now, personally, I didn't really enjoy it, and that's nothing to do with the staff or anything like that. For me, it was just because I'd had the most amazing experience with my husband and having Jack, and then to not have my husband there and to be in a hospital, it just felt quite lonely, so I didn't really enjoy it. However, they were quite helpful, and obviously were teaching me different like techniques and things, and we got through that night, so that was all fine. Then things started to get really sad, and on, I think it was day 3 of our checkups, the health visitor came round and checked Jack's weight, and he lost more than his 10% weight, and I, again, all upset. I felt really devastated that he'd lost more than the 10%, and obviously felt like it was my fault that he had lost more than the 10%. And the health visitor was fine and she was nice, but she did say to me that I should try and feed him for half an hour at one time. Now, trying to make a bit, because he was like bit feeding, so he was feeding like 5 to 10 minutes, but like every 45 minutes. He didn't want to have a long feed, he would just fall asleep. So trying to make a baby feed for half an hour was just impossible. So yeah, she said feed him for half an hour and then cuddle him for half an hour, and at the time I was like, Are you serious? Like, I have had 2 hours sleep in a night. That's just ridiculous. But being a first time mum, I took what they were saying as gospel and was like, okay, well, that's obviously what I have to do then. So after that had happened, we carried on and I was getting no sleep at all. Jack was feeding so regularly that I just felt like it was abnormal. I felt like I didn't have enough milk for him. I felt like he was going to sleep hungry, and I just did not know what's going on. I was looking on YouTube, I was making sure my positioning was correct. Things like positioning and how they latch are just not as easy as you think they're going to be. Like, there's a technique to it and it is hard. It is really, well, for me it was really hard. So I was looking on YouTube, I was watching videos of how to latch your baby on, I was checking the positioning of his mouth, I was making sure he was in the right angle and just doing everything and feeling like, what am I doing that's not right? I was questioning everything. I was questioning the technique and how he was feeding. And then I looked online at why is my baby feeding constantly, and so many pages came up and the number one thing read cluster feeding. Why are you not told about cluster feeding? So basically, if you do not know, or if you're going through this yourself, cluster feeding is where your baby is constantly feeding on you to the point where you feel like you don't have any milk. However, what they are doing is feeding and feeding and feeding because they're putting in a demand. So they are asking for more milk to come through so that then your supply increases, and that does not happen overnight. Well, it didn't for me. So Jack would feed constantly for absolutely ages, and then maybe 2 nights after, then my milk would increase, and it just kept going like that for a little while. And I'm not gonna lie, it was really tough, really tough. And one night I actually locked myself in our bedroom, not in like a bad way. I locked myself in there with Jack. He was a few weeks old and I was just like, do you know what, I'm not going to sit downstairs and just let him constantly feed with people around or being really busy. I'm just gonna, my husband went to work, I had the laptop on, I had movies on, I had loads of food, and we just fed and fed and fed and fed and fed. I think the biggest thing for me was you were told that your baby will feed every 3 hours, whether they are bottle fed or whether they are formula fed. Well, that's what I was told, and that was obviously not the case in our situation. So I couldn't get this like 3 hour thing out of my head. So I was like, no, you shouldn't be feeding, you should be waiting, because, you know, even though it's on demand, you should be going at least, you know, a couple of hours. But he wanted to feed more regularly. I just had to accept that. So once I think I had accepted that, it was so much easier. So we kept getting Jack weighed throughout this process, and he was actually gaining so much weight. He was born on the 9th percentile and he'd shot up to the 75th percentile. So he was a hungry little boy and he ate a lot. And he's remained on that 75th percentile his whole life so far. So I know that what I was doing was absolutely fine, but at the time I questioned everything, and I was so hormonal and so upset, and I didn't understand it, and I searched so many different websites about it. I will link a couple below because I found them really helpful. There's an American website called Kelly Mum, and it is so good for any advice with regards to breastfeeding, so I link that below. Also ended up calling the National Breastfeeding Helpline, and they were amazing. So basically it's just mums that have gone through breastfeeding or are breastfeeding that support other mums, and I called them a couple of times to say about certain situations, and they were just so helpful. And it was literally just a mum on the other end of the phone going, it's okay, that's normal, don't worry, what you're doing is great, like, well done you. And it was just so encouraging. And I feel like if you're in that sort of dark place where you're unsure of what's going on, you need that support and you need that encouragement. So after all of that, Jack did eventually start to then go every 2 hours between feeds. And he stayed every 2 hours for quite a while. I think up until about 6 months we fed every 2 hours. He did go a little bit longer through the night, but through the day it was 2 hours. And then I started expressing milk because obviously I was exhausted and I needed some help. So I started expressing milk around 8 weeks. And I can do a whole nother video on expressing because, again, so much to tell you when it comes to expressing, but we started from 8 weeks. I pumped pretty much every day, or at least every other day, for a really long time. I had a freezer full of milk, and my husband would give Jack a bottle maybe a couple of times to 3 times a week, and we kept that up. We were so consistent because we knew people that weren't able to feed through a bottle because their babies went to like a long period of time without feeding in through a bottle, so we wanted to be consistent because we didn't want that to happen. But we were expressing from 8 weeks and Jack was feeding every 2 hours, and it only got better. So although the first few weeks were really, really tough, it completely paid off, and here I am today still breastfeeding a toddler, which sounds insane to me because I literally thought that, one, I would not last those first few weeks. After like the first week I was like, I can't do this, let alone over a year. So Jack is on 3 feeds a day now at 12 months old. He's on a morning feed, an afternoon feed around 2 or 3, and then a feed before bed. So that feed before bed is usually cow's milk, but the others are breast milk. And I'm pretty sure soon he will stop the middle feed and just have the morning and night feed. So that's everything, I think. Sorry if it's a little bit rambly. If you have any questions at all, then please leave them below, or if you're going through something similar and you want something clarifying, or if I've missed something, then please leave anything below and I'll have a look and get back to you. I will also leave links to anything that I used that helped me, so any like forums and websites that I found really good and really helpful. I will link my breastfeeding tips video below, and that just includes like lots of different products and things that I use during breastfeeding, like pumps and pads and stuff. So if you want to have a look at that, then I'll leave that below as well. But I really hope you enjoyed watching. Please like and subscribe if you want to see more from me, and I will see you soon. Bye!